In more than 2 decades of selling real estate, I've never seen more proverbial nails in the housing coffin than I'm seeing happening all at once right now. CNN came out recently in the last few days and put out the quiet part out loud, which is uncharacteristic for them, and I don't like to cite most of the mainstream news outlets, including CNN, but they came out and said that Jerome Powell can't come out and say that he hopes unemployment rate goes up to 6%. It doesn't sound politically attractive, but that unemployment rate has to rise. And they said that it's actually good news if it does increase, and that Fed officials have warned that the job market's too strong right now and it's contributing to a very high cost of living. And the article goes on to say that everything, the wages themselves are so high that it's not just the cost of the commodities that have to come down, the wages actually need to come down. And that to do that, you can't really go to an existing worker who's worked for you for the last 2 years, that's actually gotten a raise last year that was the highest pay rate they've ever received, and say to them, by the way, things are tough, but the rate we've been paying you needs to come back a couple dollars. And that's what the CNN was alluding to, is the fact that in order to get the handle on inflation, there has to be a movement of getting a whole lot of overpaid, quote unquote overpaid workers off the books. So there has to be a culling of the herd, so to speak. And that seems to line up. And one of the things that I had mentioned recently in my last video was how Blackrock and Goldman Sachs and a lot of different firms across Wall Street, across America, are saying that they're going to curtail remote workers. And I made the argument, and I'll try and link that video, that the argument being, hey, you're not productive. Elon Musk said, hey, I don't think these people are working, and if you don't come back to work, you're not going to have a job here. And as they're pushing these people to come back to work, they're having to leave a state that they moved to. Made the argument, how many people in the last 2 years, it's got to be in the amount of 3 to 4 million people in the last 2 years alone that moved to another state and now have a house that if they're going to keep their job, it's in another state, they have to go in and actually return to work. And barring them owning an airplane, it's not going to happen unless they sell their house. And the market would be easily tipped with that much inventory coming into it all at once. Many folks had commented on that particular video saying, hey, you know what, I'm a tech worker. I will never come back to work. You got to understand that what Jerome Powell is promoting and saying, I'm going to increase unemployment, and how bad that is for the economy. What you're saying whenever your company comes to you and says, hey, I need you to move away from this remote farm country that you live in now and come back to New York City or come back to Seattle, come back wherever you left. The folks that are saying, even commenting, saying, hey, you know what, me and my buddies saved some money, we're not coming back to work. This is exactly the game plan, okay? So I didn't even mention this in the last video, but the concept is basically a process of stealth layoffs. So essentially, like, you're laying off your workforce without having to come to them and fire them. You know, you don't have to come to them and say, hey, Jack, thanks for your dedication the past 2 years and, you know, sticking it out and working remote through the pandemic. We need to reduce your wages because inflation's coming down. The Fed's jumping those rates. Prices, things are coming down. We can't do business at such a high cost. Keep in mind, remember, a lot of the cost of services that have become inflated, payroll, what you pay the people to deliver the service, can't stay high if you're going to deflate the price of costs and goods again. So all this stuff works in tandem. And I think probably some of this to a degree is most obvious to this audience. But I do want to share this. It doesn't matter which problem hits your marketplace. They're all bad. I mean, take this example where people are coming on to my last video. Remote workers saying defiantly, I will not take my job back. I won't go back into the office. Okay, well, you get fired, okay? So how long can you live without an income? Number one. Number two, the job of all these employers is if you ever come back to pay you less than when you were working there, okay? So the coercion is come back to work or be laid off. Either way, that's a recessionary move. That's less money working in the economy. That's people that do not have a job. In the end, people that do not have a job and have a house payment bad combination, defaults are going to rise. So defaults can rise because people make less money as well. So now, Amazon CEO last 2 days came out and said, essentially, we can't keep paying rank and file much more money. Like, we can't keep paying ordinary drivers. This $25 an hour rate has got to stop. Essentially, he's kind of rhyming with everything else. Is that, and at the core of what he's saying, he said in his quote, there's a limit to the economics you can pay and have a business that can be profitable, which is absolutely true. If the Fed keeps raising the cost of the interest rate, if the rates keep going up to squeeze the prices of things to come down so the consumer doesn't break when they're buying food and they're buying fuel and they're buying insurance and all these kinds of things, all the other things like payroll that all jumped up in the economy over the last 2 years has to be reversed. And it's not easy to come to the American worker and say, hey, are you ready for your pay cut now? So a lot of this, this massive move to remote work, and if you did not catch that, I am going to tell you that story alone can be a huge driver to this marketplace losing easily 25 to 35%. If that plays itself out, and I'm already hearing like anecdotal evidence in my marketplace of so-and-so had to sell, they've got to go back to their job. They moved here literally for that reason, and they cannot stay, and they have a house that they're gonna have to push in the market as interest rates are peaking even higher in the next 9 days, and I believe they're gonna go consistently higher for mortgage rates. 30-year mortgage rates are gonna get more expensive, and the marketplace is already basically at a standstill. It is at a, if you have anybody telling you, or you read an article that says demand for housing is still high, they are ignorant or they're not looking at the numbers, because buyers are staring at sellers, and the only sellers getting out are the ones that are cutting the prices, and that's why you have record pricing going up. So the interesting thing is, it's not a one-off problem. It's multiple nails in the coffin. It's unemployment, because we're going to stealth lay people off. We're going to cut people back anyways. 51%. Recent survey, large businesses said we're dropping people this year. Big unemployment's coming. You have reduction in wages is coming. I don't care if you haven't noticed, it's coming. Like, read what the Powell's not being secretive about this. Multiple times over, the Fed chairman's talking about the pain part. So you can't maintain a 3.5% unemployment rate if you're going to fix inflation. And when you have the economic part, it's the recessionary part that's going to be, I've said it all along, short sales are coming to the housing market by the fall of 2023. You're going to see them. In certain markets, they're going to be heavy by the fall of 2023. Okay, so, and all that's, it's recessionary driver. And you don't need a ton of, people say, where's the inventory for the market? You don't need a ton of inventory when you have people that need to sell and a market with no demand in it. That's all. You already have falling prices across the country with historically low inventory. You do not need a high inventory for the market to crash. That's it. If I'm wrong, take me to task in the comments. As always, if you appreciate the content, hit that like button. And the 90% of you that haven't subscribed yet, come on, follow us on this journey. We'll talk to you real soon.